Let's kick it!
Hi, this is Laura.
And this is Mark.
And we're
Kicking It with Doree.
Welcome to the Kicking It with Doree podcast. I am Doree Allen Nieves, your host. Laura Tong, along with her partner Mark, is the founder of PositivelyHappy.me. A former health professional and world record holder, she is on a mission to help you become your happiest, most positive self. Laura's other passions include painting, renovating her house in France, and building everything from Ozark float boats to hovercraft. She also loves traveling, adventuring, and discovering just how great people are the world over. Join Laura at PositivelyHappy.me and find your smile. I would like to welcome to the show Mark and Laura Tong, Mr. and Mrs. Mark and Laura Tong.
Hey, thank you so much, Doree. We are so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, you guys are like old friends that I've never met. Yes. Laura and Mark were on the show last year on Kicking It with Doree, and at that time we were talking about 21 ways to live without regrets. And this is kind of like a tiny little piece of that, sort of. In a way, it's kind of related to that. Laura's got a new book that just came out, and it's called The Life-Changing Power of No. And I think that when you learn how to say no to things that don't serve you, then you will avoid some regrets. So we're going to talk about the word no and reclaiming your power, and hopefully everyone that's listening will feel empowered by some of the tips that the Tongs have for us today. So again, thanks for sharing. We're on different time zones here. They're in Europe and I'm in America, but this is obviously a universal thing that we as humans all have and that we can learn from each other for this. So we're going to go right into it. First thing I want to ask you, Laura, is, and Mark, how or what did you see from your clients or your experiences that inspired you to write this book about the life-changing power of no?
Hello there, Doree. Well, just to answer Mark here, I was just going to say, I think we write for a lot of blogs like Huffington Post and Tiny Buddha, and we've written dozens and dozens and dozens of posts. And the ones that often got the most response, the most comments, the most people actually giving us feedback about them were about people pleasing, saying no, standing up for yourself. We found that's what people really seem to be struggling with. And when we actually thought, maybe we should follow this up, we actually surveyed our own audience because we run a blog, PositivelyHappy.me. And when we surveyed our audience, again, we found that whereas we thought a lot of problems people had came from separate sources, when we actually surveyed them, when we dug deeper, we found that an awful lot of problems people had all came from the same source, which was this problem about standing up for yourself and actually saying no. It caused an awful lot of problems that later on, as you said, sort of showed itself in regret and stuff like that. And as you were saying, last year we came on the program and we talked about our post 21 ways to live without regret. Well, this is definitely the 22nd way. If you learn to say no, then you will definitely not live a life of regret.
And we also have a lot of people contact us directly, people who read our work wherever they found it, which is absolutely fantastic. And there's a real common theme in so many of the emails that we get, where people are asking, it's almost like they're asking for permission to set some boundaries. They're really struggling, they're really good people, they're really trying to do their best, and they're completely overwhelmed, or they're completely frustrated in life because they're not living their own lives at all. And when we really looked at all the contacts we'd had, so many of them, people were saying, help! And that's where the book has come from, all of that, plus what Mark has said.
Well, it is a very thorough book. I think it addresses all of the different issues and underlying reasons and motivations why people find it hard to say no. Some people are, as you said, naturally people pleasers, but there's lots of other reasons why it's hard for certain people to say no when they're asked for help. So for those people that find it easy to say no. Can you briefly explain or expound upon why it would be hard for someone to say no to people? What might be motivating them, maybe in their past or just their personality or whatever?
Sure. I think a lot of the time what we found is that people feel bad about saying no. That's the honest bottom line of it all. Sometimes it's a lack of confidence. Sometimes it's low self-esteem. Sometimes it's just they feel they should. They don't like the idea. Why should they win and someone else lose? Because that's what it feels like to a lot of people when they say no. They're asked to do something, and if they say no, they feel like they've completely won and the other person's got nothing. And I think it's because they're really decent, kind, compassionate, thoughtful people that saying no just seems so awful. It seems so selfish. Whereas what we're trying to achieve in the book is showing people how to set those boundaries so that you don't always say no. You can, but that's not what we're suggesting. It's that there are times when you want to say no, and it's also about getting that balance.
I think also that one of the biggest things is actually it's a very cultural thing as well, I think, Derry. Because my family is actually French and Irish. I've actually got no English relatives, and I was born in England. And this problem of saying no, you really don't come across it that much in France and Ireland, as you do in perhaps England and America and stuff like that. It's quite a cultural thing. I think a big thing is that you're taught that it's selfish to put yourself first, and that this is kind of a complete misreading, I think, of the whole idea. You have to put yourself first. If you don't put yourself first and you don't look after your own needs first, then there's no way you can go out and help other people. You need to be, I'm sure you'd agree with that, Derry, you need to be, a happy, healthy person so you can go out and spread that happiness and health to other people. And one of the main ways to do that is to set boundaries. And if you don't know how to say no, you can't set boundaries, and it just doesn't work.
Another reason people like to be very respectful, which is wonderful. And I've put this as a thread all through the book because I don't want to live in a world where people don't care about other people. I like the fact that people want to be nice and kind and compassionate. It's just when it gets a bit too far. And I think that is a big reason why some people don't want to say no, because they think it's disrespectful. Whereas what we show in the book is that you can say it with absolute respect. It doesn't mean that you're saying no to the person. You're simply saying no to whatever the request is. And I think that's a really important point.
Yes, it is, because even though you want to be respectful to another person, especially if it's an elder or a parent or something, you also need to be respectful of yourself, because what you want to do is teach people that you are a helpful person, you love them, you care about them, you're there for them, but at the same time, you're also valuable too. Your time is valuable, your efforts are valuable. And so that leads us to the next thing I wanted to ask you. There's this great section in the book where Laura and Mark are giving scripts and different examples of ways that you can say no to people in a kind manner, with compassion and respect, and depending on what the situation calls for, in a professional manner, depends on the setting. So what are some of the ways, if you want to share a couple of ways that people can say no and they won't be necessarily creating a conflict within themselves or feeling guilty about it?
Absolutely, Derry. The thing is basically that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book the way we did, is you're saying the first half of the book is trying to explain why you say yes and struggle to say no, and then giving the reasons why you shouldn't worry about saying no. A big one being guilt. You shouldn't feel guilty about saying no. And then the second half of the book, as you say, is word-for-word scripts, which we actually very hesitated about actually putting in, because everybody's different and their education is different, the way they're brought up is different and all this kind of thing. So to actually sort of say this is how you can physically say no word for word, it's quite difficult to do, so we hesitated about that. But we wanted the book to be really useful to people, so why we put it in. But the one thing about all of this is that everybody's human and most people are exactly the same. So if you're saying no to somebody and you know how people react, then you can have kind of a formula. In the book we've got several formulas about how to say no, as you say, so that whoever you're saying no to, even if they're slightly difficult people, you can say no politely, and you can decline politely, and you can do it without conflict or without feeling guilt, so you don't feel like you're being disrespectful. One of the ways is that everybody likes to be thanked, and the truth is that if you're saying no to somebody, if you start off by thanking them for some positive point, then immediately, you've got them on your side, as it were. And not only that, the most important thing, and the thing that people struggle with is saying no, is actually getting people to hear them say no. We get this a lot. This is what we get with a lot of people saying to us, a lot of emails and stuff, and we've experienced ourselves, that if you're not very confident, people just don't hear you say no. So the main thing you need to do, first of all, is grab someone's attention. And the best way to grab anybody's attention is to thank them for something, and that immediately grabs their attention. If you then follow this up by complimenting them about something, then before you've said no, one, they're paying attention to you, two, you're not being disrespectful, and three, you've got their full attention. That's always a really good way to start. And the other reason is to start that way is really something that we believe a lot in, is gratitude. If you sort of go into something in a confrontational way, like I'm going to say no to this, I don't want to do this, then it makes you act aggressively. If you go into something and you think, well, okay, what can I find in this to say thank you for, or to compliment somebody about, even if I'm then actually going to say no to the thing they're asking me, then you go in with a much different attitude. So I'd say for anything really, if you can find something to thank someone for, doesn't matter how small it is, and then compliment them about something, and then actually say no, for most people, that's the best way to go.
Absolutely.
Very good. Sometimes I'll go to my mom. She's like my number one, kill them softly, like tell them something without really like them knowing that you've told them off or whatever. Like she's awesome at that. And so she's got that. It's like a little bit of respect and kindness and a little bit of I'm going to be assertive. And so she didn't tell me the thank you part, but she did advise me of certain things like, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. And that way it's like, it's not saying thank you like you suggested, but you are just putting a period there, and you don't necessarily, she said, have to explain yourself, because sometimes people can get to that point where they say no, but then they feel like, okay, well, I've got to explain, I've got all these other obligations and I can't add something else to it or whatever. I want them to know that it's not them, or it's not because I don't want the position, or I don't want blah, 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 blah. But she's like, no, you don't have to explain all of that. You're an adult. You don't have to do all of that. And I think that sometimes, because as you mentioned in the beginning of the book, and many of us with our culture, we're so ingrained to say yes all the time that when we say no, we want to give an excuse and kind of soften the blow a bit.
Absolutely. And just to be clear about the thank you thing, what we mean by that is find something good in the request you're about to say no to. You've got to tell. For instance, if you give an example of your mother, not your mother, obviously personally, but if your mother's a little bit domineering or something, and she says to you, oh, I want you to come round Thanksgiving again or for Easter, and you think, that I've got other plans. But then again, under all that, it's very possible that she actually really would like to see you as well. So if you can say, hey, thanks so much for thinking of me, thanks so much for, inviting me over. I know you put in a lot of effort, which is the compliment part, but this time I'm going to have to say no. Mm-hmm. I think that's a respectful thing, because I think it's very easy, as I say, to get into that kind of confrontational feel when you want to say no.
Yeah.
Most people aren't entirely bad in the world. And really, on the whole, there's always something you can find good in what people are trying to offer you, even if you don't want to turn it down.
That's true.
You made a really good point there, Derry, when you were saying about explaining, and we do cover this in the book, because we do suggest that you do explain if you want to, because for some people it makes them feel better about saying no. They actually feel more genuine because they want to say, I'm really sorry, but I really can't do it, and they feel better if they can give the reason. But we do advise to keep as short and sweet as you can, because you can dig yourself a very big hole and end up saying yes and taking your no back before you've even finished saying it. Really interesting word there you said about an excuse, and I think that's what makes people feel bad sometimes, because they're giving their explanations, but to them it's feeling like an excuse, which is why we cover guilt in the book, because I think all of that you can learn how to say no, but you need to get your thoughts in the right place. So you need to not feel guilty when you're saying it, and then it won't feel like an excuse. It will feel like a genuine explanation. But as I say, we do say in there, it's entirely up to you. And your mum was quite right. If you don't want to explain, don't explain.
There's also a very good psychological point. It's been shown in a lot of psychological research and tests that strangely, it doesn't really matter what the reason is that you give someone. It's only that you give them a reason. it doesn't really matter how valid the reason is or how much detail you go into. It's just the fact that you've given somebody a reason. So if you, as you say, if you just say to somebody, you give them a one-line reason why you can't do something, that's as effective as if you rattle on for 20 minutes and dig yourself a grave and come around in a circle and, actually end up saying yes. So you don't have to go into detail. But sometimes just like a one-line, even if you were to say, I'm just too busy doing something else, something like that, it just kind of does help soften the blow, as it were.
Yeah.
But it's only if you wish to.
Sure.
So, what are the benefits of saying no? Or conversely, you could come at it the other way. What are the drawbacks of saying yes to everything?
Wow, we could go on all night. Let's start with the benefits of saying no. One of the biggest things we found personally, and when we talk to other people as well, is that you gain self-respect, which is what you lose if you say yes forever. And I think it's quite insidious. I think the more you say yes, the more it eats away a little bit of you. The more you say no, the more confidence you gain, the more self-belief you have. You actually understand how important some of the things are to you that are important to you. And when you make time for them by setting those boundaries, you get that real boost about, I'm an important person, just like the person that's asking me is an important person. So I think that self-respect is really important.
And I've got to say that nobody ever did anything good in this world without saying no to something first. If you're going to say yes to something good, if you're going to say yes to something better in your life, if you're going to say yes to anything worthwhile, that yes always goes with a no. You always have to say no to something else as well. So I think when you're thinking about saying no, you also, you've got to think about the fact that it opens up all these doors to something else that you can say yes to. So it's not like a no isn't an end, a no is a beginning to something else.
Sure. And within that, you do gain opportunities. And we do actually cover turning down an opportunity, which for some people, the reason they don't want to say no to an opportunity, even one they don't want, is because it seems ungrateful. And none of us want to be ungrateful. But it is very important that if an opportunity isn't right for you, or you don't want it, or it's the wrong time, you do feel able to turn it down. But what we found is, by saying no to the wrong opportunities, you open up your time, space, and energy for the opportunities that are right for you. So a really big thing that you can gain is opportunity. Obviously, you can gain time, you can gain new friends or the proper friends that really will actually impact your life positively by turning down, not people directly, but invitations to things you don't really want to go to. And bizarrely, that can be the hardest thing to say no to, we found. It's kind of social invitations people really, really struggle with because it seems rude or disrespectful. They don't want to say no to it. We found huge waves of people saying that they gain peace of mind, and again we've experienced that ourselves by saying no. You lose all of the angst and overwhelm and frustration and regret, coming back to what we were saying at the beginning. That's just a few of the main things we found.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I haven't turned on any social invitations. Nobody's inviting me. I moved since the last time we spoke together, and so I'm in a different area. This has been really fun, as always, and I want to share with people how they can get a copy of your book, how they can find you online, follow you on social media, your website, everything that you have, because this little 15-20 minute interview that we're having is just a tiny little taste of what the Tongs are about. They have a really awesome blog. That's how I found them, and just like kind of snatched them up out of the blue and said, you've got to talk to my people. So
you can get the book on Amazon, any Amazon. It's The Life-Changing Power of No. And if you look under Laura Tong, she's down as the author, obviously. I'm down as the editor. But if you come to Laura Tong, you'll find it, The Life-Changing Power of No. And if you want to find us independently, you can find us at positivelyhappy.me, which hopefully is easy to remember.
We don't do so much of social media, so you might find us on Pinterest, but we're a bit haphazard with that, I'll be honest.
A little bit haphazard.
It's kind of at the end of our to-do list, so we haven't quite got to that.
We're just talking about being social, and they're not even social. Get this.
No.
Just kidding. Sometimes it's better to Gotta be on everything, though. You know, you gotta pick and choose your thing, but seriously, the blog, positivelyhappy.me, it's awesome. The book is awesome. I've started reading it, and it's really something interesting, the way that they've broken down all these different things that you don't even think about when you're talking to people and interacting, and, you know, things come into play. It's very interesting. If you did not catch that, it's okay. The website, DereeAllen.com, will have these links there. I'll also have a link to their previous interview so that you can listen to us talk about 21 ways to avoid regrets in your life. Again, Mr. and Mrs. Laura and Mark Tong, thank you so much for sharing with us again on Kicking It with Doree, and thank you for kicking it with me.
Oh, it's lovely to come on.
Thank you for the invite. Honestly, we love talking to you, Doree. It's always good fun.
Happy to come anytime.
Yeah, and thank you so much. It's been fantastic.
Send your questions and comments about this show to kickingit@DereeAllen.com. That's KICKINIT. There's no G. At DereeAllen.com. Or you can use Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter to get to me at Doree Allen.